Is Urho available tonight, or?
Vox?
Yeah.
Vox will not play tonight.
So Robertson comes in?
Yeah.
How was the makeup of the second power play unit change? With obviously Rempe out, you don't have that net front presence, but now you had Taylor Radish and Johnny Bonsinski there. How does that kind of change the makeup of it?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's just from a personnel standpoint, it's just a little bit different. Taylor Radish is a good-sized kid, also. Obviously not as big as Remps is. Remps is a handful there for a lot of reasons. But having said that, we think we have capable people that we can plug in there that can help us, that are trying to accomplish the same thing. And, what's the objective? What's the role that we're looking for that person to play? We'd ideally like that power play to be a shooting power play. They don't get a significant amount of time. So we want them getting pucks to the net and trying to create offense and score goals that way. So that was one of the reasons we put Remps there in the first place, is if we're trying to build a shooting power play, we want to make the goalie sight lines difficult. We want to make the defenseman at the net front's job difficult. And when you have a guy like Remps with the size, and his reach, he's a handful there, as I said. So, I think Taylor Radish at the net front is good size, has good reach. He can do similar things. So I don't think it changes it significantly, if that's what you're asking.
With your experience, what's the key when you're coming off the road trip like you came off when you first came back? What's the key?
I think it's just simplify everything we do. I think we've got to be ready from the drop of the puck. I think we have to simplify everything we do. And just playing the most simplest version of our game, and I think that will allow us to establish the game that we played on when we played on the road, quite honestly. And so, against a pretty tough opponent in Carolina coming back. So
You've talked about that stacked top line that you have now and trying to get them all going. As far as Artemi specifically, I mean, are you seeing anything like is he just having shots where goalies are making great saves, or is there something that's not quite clicking for him?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. He's definitely getting some looks. I thought the last game, I thought that's the best he's looked, especially on the power play. He was attacking when he was getting the puck off the flank. He was attacking the net, looking for that next play or shooting himself. And I think when he gets underneath people and he gets inside the dots, he's really dangerous. And I thought the last game on the power play in particular, he was, that was evident. I think that the power play last game generated, if I'm not mistaken, 10 scoring chances. So, and he was a big part of it. He was in the middle of all of that. So, I definitely think that that he's making progress there. I do think he's getting looks 5-on-5, and he's my experience in coaching players of his caliber is sometimes as coaches we just have to be careful we don't get in the way there. So we're trying to give him a lot of latitude with his offensive game. And, we share our observations with him. But obviously, those types of players, what makes them unique is they tend to think the game differently than others. And that's part of what makes them who they are. And I've always been a strong believer that, I try not to get in the way of that process. So he's at his best when he's in that instinctive mindset. And he's trusting his instincts, and we're trying to encourage that.
Was any part of his slow start related to the fact that he had the injury in preseason and didn't play preseason?
Well, I'm sure it didn't help. Just my experience has been when players miss training camp, it's hard because you're jumping on a moving train. there's conditioning involved, there's timing, there's lots of things that are involved, but I'm sure it didn't help.
How do you feel?
Okay.
How do you feel like playing with Lava has helped elevate the game of both Lafreniere and Khalil in the past couple of years?
Well, I just think two things with respect to that line. There's a lot of speed on that line. Lobs plays a pretty simple game, straight ahead, but he's big, strong, and he skates. He gets in on pucks. He hunts pucks, as does Will Cooley also. And then in the offensive zone, they're connected. They stay close. They have that triangle offense, so to speak, down below the tops of the circles, and they're able to win pucks and keep pucks in the offensive zone because of it. And I think that allows them the opportunity to have success.
With Alexis, he's got some numbers that indicate that he should be having a better year than he is. Shots on goal, things like that. Do you think he's a victim of some bad luck early on, or does he need to do something else just to get the goals coming for him?
I think the answer is probably a little bit of both. I do think he hasn't got a whole lot of puck luck to this point. That's a crowded bus. You could probably say that about a fair amount of our guys early on here, but I think it's starting to change. Mika's started to score some goals. JT's chipping in now. I think it's starting to evolve, which we felt it would. I think Laff has had a lot of really good opportunities. I think the next step is just bearing down and making sure that you bear down in those scenarios when you get those looks.
What is the challenge of the style that Carolina brings to the building?
Well, they play a straight-ahead game. They're ultra-aggressive. They're probably the hardest man-on-man team in the league. And the challenge is always going to be you've got to be able to beat their aggression. And so breakouts are going to be an important element of that, our ability to get out of our end, and then our ability to control territory. If we can force them to expend energy defending us, it takes them out of the game they want to play.
Igor tonight?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Okay.